guys, we are right between the wood duck box and the beaver pond, if you've watched some of the previous videos I've made, and right next to the creek. So this is kind of a wet area, and in any wet area in New York, you're going to come across skunk cabbage. So right here we have some skunk cabbage. There's kind of two parts we're going to look at, this leafy green structure and then this purple structure. So come on in and take a look. This purple structure comes up through the soil first, and then the leaves come later. Right over here you can see the purple flowers and just barely leaves coming up. So take a closer look. The skunk cabbage can actually create its own heat to come up through soil that is frozen. This will come up as early as February. Skunk cabbage can be found all the way into northern Canada and then down into Tennessee and Kentucky. This is technically eastern skunk cabbage, as western skunk cabbage is its own thing. So we were on our way from the skunk cabbage to the next place we were going to film, and we came across something cool. So come on and take a look. Right here, we saw this on the ground, and I was like, what is it? It's the operculum of a fish, which means the gill cover on a fish where they pump water in and out to breathe. And so I was like, how could it have gotten here? Well, we looked around and we made some observations. So let me show you what we found. All right, guys, so we found that operculum, and now we're trying to figure out what could have happened, what animal could have eaten that fish. And when you're out in the woods, when you make observations, it's just like reading a book. What does the sign around you say? And so you can actually see there's a lot of animal tracks going onto the bank of the creek here through the mud. Some of them I can identify. I know we have beaver, I know we have deer, but there's one I don't know what it is. We've seen its prints all the way over next to where we found that fish gill cover. So come on in, take a look at some of these more defined tracks. You can see here that the animal kind of slid around in the mud a little bit, and you can see kind of the palm, if you will, like on your palm here, and then the fingers or digits here. And so it's about, it's bigger than a $50. You can just see a size comparison to my hand. And when we look at these tracks, as it's sliding, we can see that it might have claws. It comes to a point, but some of the less defined tracks, there's no claw mark. So we're not sure what this is. We're going to go home and do some research and say, hey, what is this animal that we saw? So I was talking about tracks in a little bit firmer mud that didn't have those claw marks. And so this is what I'm talking about. We have a footprint right here and then one right next to it. And there's no obvious claw marks at the tips of these digits. All right, so make sure you look at multiple footprints if you have the opportunity to help you in identifying an animal. I cannot wait to figure out what this is. We are looking for evidence of red squirrel. And in everything we've talked about, the red squirrel is kind of unique in that it can be found anywhere in North America. It does require forests. Specifically, it does like evergreens. So when you get in the Southwest, it will be contained to pockets of trees. But you can find this on the West Coast, on the East Coast, up into Canada, and down into the South. What we're looking for is evidence of feeding during the winter. Red squirrels stash away pine cones in the fall and over the summer to eat throughout the winter. So if you come on in and take a look, we have found what we call a midden. You might have heard of a shell midden before. So a midden is just a lot of the food scraps from something or some organism eating. And right here, we have a nice big pile of pine cone debris. And so what happened here is a squirrel sat up in the branches of the tree, ate his pine cone, and all of the inedible material fell to the ground in a little pile. So if you see this, you know you have red squirrels. Hey guys, you remember we were out in the woods, we found some tracks, and we were trying to identify them. And so here I have pictures of them side by side, and we're going to take a look at them and look at several different characteristics. And kind of whatever tracks you're looking at, these are some good things to look at. So first, I want to try to count the digits that appear on each track. And so I can go 1, 2, 3, 4, but then the tracks kind of run into each other. Down here, the same thing happens. The tracks are right next to each other, so I can't get a good count on the digits. But
the fact that those tracks are so close to each other is a hint on what this might be. And so I did some research. I asked my dad, and okay, so here we are looking at animal track identification put out by the Maine Department of Inland Fisheries and Wildlife, so we know it's a good source. It's a .gov, and kind of two things we were debating between is the bobcat, number 2 here, and the fisher, number 12. And in the end, we're going with fisher. You'll notice the fisher has 5 digits. The bobcat has 4. They're about the same size. Bobcat's roughly 2 inches. Fisher is roughly 2.5, and that's going to vary based on the gender and the size and the age of the animal. But you'll notice the fisher tracks. This is the fisher traveling from left to right. The fisher tracks are right next to each other, where we go up to the bobcat and we'll see that they are spaced out. They walk differently. So our tracks, we can't tell how many digits they are, but we do see with the fisher, we do get some slight pointing, not necessarily a claw mark, but those look like our prints in the soft mud. And we have this walking pattern that is exactly what we saw. If you're wondering what happened with the dead fisher we found a few weeks ago, we called the DEC and they said under normal circumstances they would most definitely want to come and take this animal to study to see why it died. And normally they would take a stomach sample, they weight, and try to age it and all these other things. So we gave them measurements of weight and length and just our observations, and they recorded that and said, let us know if we find another one, because if we find another one, they would make an attempt to come and get it, just because it's very rare for a fisher to die with no observable reason.
And the red squirrel